I just watched The Dark Side of the Ring on Owen Hart, and I want to talk a little bit about Owen Hart's in-ring career. I'm not going to touch on any of the stuff that happened with his untimely demise. Owen Hart, I remember some of my first earliest memories of wrestling. I saw the Blue Blazer at WrestleMania, on VHS or whatever, wherever I saw it back when I was a kid. But I remember the Blue Blazer, in the early days, and he was almost doing like lucha libre almost kind of stuff before anybody else that I ever saw. There was other high flyers around like the Dynamite Kid and shit like that in that era, but I think Owen Hart might have been the first ever lucha libre guy that I saw in the WWF. Um, and then I remember the Owen Brett feud. Well, first Owen and Brett were tag teaming, and they were doing they were just doing what they do, being brothers. And then I remember they did the Owen Brett jealousy angle, and yeah, Owen started to get over. I remember some of his promos could be at times a little obnoxious, but that was just maybe how his personality came across on screen to the fans. I remember Owen and the Bulldog, being managed by Cornette and all that with Yokozuna. I forget what they called it. I don't know if they called it Camp Cornette. Now, in that era, that wasn't my favorite era of pro wrestling in general, like the 94 to 95 era. I think they still might have been teaming in 96. But, yeah, so then, the Hart Foundation stable comes out, and, I agree with Jim Ross on this. That's one of the greatest stables that I ever saw in wrestling. It was surprisingly good too. It was like, you know, everybody knew Brett and Jim Neidhart as the Hart Foundation, and they were a great tag team. But to see the Hart Foundation stable come in the way that it did, it was kind of unexpected from the fans. Like, we were like, whoa, wait a minute. These guys are like a gang now, like a Canadian gang. And they could all wrestle. It was like a gang. It was almost like a football team or something like that, because they had Pillman with them too. And yeah, it was just, very, very cool to see, actually, to see the Hart Foundation stable come to life. Um, they lost Brian, right before the screw job happened, but we'll skip over all that, and then I'll just talk a little bit about the Blackheart thing that they were doing with Owen, because Owen came back strong, and they were almost kind of, he was almost kind of like doing the Steve Austin thing for a little bit, and I remember him just chucking people around with his uh, version of the belly to belly suplex that he would do. Like, he would kind of chuck him kind of over his head, um, and it was working. I remember all that. Like, Owen Hart was coming back as a badass motherfucker. He was always his. You know what it is, in his wrestling career, his style always changed. Like, he went from being a high flyer then to kind of being like mid card intercontinental champion kind of guy, then into a tag wrestler, then into kind of like more of a technical kind of wrestler, badass, with a chip on his shoulder. Um, I didn't understand why they put him in the Nation of Domination the way they did. Like, he always seemed like kind of an odd fit for that, because it was an all black group, like a Pan African kind of Islamic kind of group. So I never understood why he was in that group. Almost kind of seemed like a rib. But yeah, and then he was teaming with Jeff Jarrett and shit like that, and I know they were buddies. So yeah, man, that's really all I want to say about Owen, man. But Owen Hart is somebody who should be remembered, I think, for his work, because he was a great fucking worker and a great, person in the wrestling business. I mean, the whole Hart family should be absolutely fucking honored and adored in the wrestling world, and should get their credit where credit's due, because they were a fucking dynasty. You know what I mean? But yeah, so I don't know.